Welcome to the New Life Podcast. Today we are joined by Tabitha and Trevor to just learn a little bit more about the Children's Lifehouse and how it has changed their life. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
First time on a podcast, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Haven't done one before. So this is exciting.
This is
Four of
the
us.
first time we did a podcast before, and now we have this one. This is the first time we've ever had 4 people on a podcast at one time.
It's an honor.
You will be cemented in history
Yes.
in the New Life podcast world. For however long it exists, you can say we were the first.
You should just pin it on the top of the profile.
There we go.
Yep, it will be the best video.
Yeah,
For
most
sure.
viewed.
I am excited to get to talk to you guys. You've been doing this ministry for a little while now and just seeing your guys' perspective. But I do think it's beneficial for us to know just kind of who you are. So just kind of share what your names are and just kind of your life.
I'm Tabitha. This is Trevor. So Trevor and I have known each other for a long time. Obviously, we're married too, but we were friends through high school. We met when he was a freshman, I was a sophomore, and we rode the bus together. It was like a busy first day of school, and everybody's on the bus, and there's nowhere to sit. And this guy's hogging the seat with his book bag, and I just said, "Hey, can I sit with you?"
Wow. Hallmark movie right there.
Yeah. So just from then, I'd asked to sit with him, and then it kind of became a thing. If I got on the bus before him, he would sit with me.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly, I was like, I don't want to sit in the back where all my brother and his friends would sit. And I'm like, I'm not sitting back there. I just want to listen to my music and zone out on the way home and not deal with these kids.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I sat with Trevor, and we kind of had, mutual friends, too. So my best friend, her cousin was his best friend. So then, one day, he's like, hey, you want to hang out? I'll invite Trevor. And so we all hung out, and I was like, hey, I read the bus with him. So I don't know, kind of from there, we would hang out, we'd text, and we never dated or anything in high school. We were just friends. So that's kind of how we started to get to know one another.
And now he's here. Can't get rid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when did you guys get married? What year?
In 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
You got married, I think, 2 weeks after we got married.
Yeah, we had to coordinate wedding dates. I do remember this.
I do remember this,
We were like, okay, when are you getting married so we don't pick the same day?
Because I was like, well, I think you guys got engaged first.
No, I think you guys were first.
Because I just remember,
Yeah.
we were just like, hey, we don't want to, because I was going to ask you the same thing.
Yeah.
I
And she
remember
stopped
the
me.
scenario because she worries about all this stuff.
Yeah.
You guys got engaged first. We had a date picked out, but she wanted to make sure you guys didn't have
Yeah.
the same date because you guys got engaged
I was
first.
like, they were
So
first,
you guys
so they get
first
first
dibs.
dibs.
I only kept thinking, I don't want to mess with Savannah and Phil's, but I wasn't, worried because we had, an idea because we wanted to get initially married on the day we were engaged, but a year later. But it was a Friday.
Oh.
So I was like, I'm not
That would have
getting
been
married on a
cheaper.
Friday. Yeah, I probably would have been.
Yeah. Also, we probably should have just got married with Tab and Trevor. So
We should have.
because ours was 1,000 degrees.
Theirs was also pretty toasty,
It
but
was.
they
Not
had
as
an
toasty as
indoor
ours.
venue.
Yeah.
Not as
We did
toasty as
not.
ours.
Yeah, your guys' was.
Ours was rough.
Yeah.
So how old are both of you?
So I'm 31.
Oh
Thank
my
you for
goodness.
asking.
Just kidding.
Very rude, but
No,
okay.
This is essential to the rest of this podcast.
I just turned 30, so.
Yep.
You had to add that in there.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago for sure.
Don't worry, Phil's quickly following.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. No, I don't care. I hope, because our baby's gonna be due around the time of my birthday. I hope that the baby has the same birthday as me, so I stop having birthdays.
His birthday just no longer exists.
So you guys are the foster parents of the Children's Lifehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of tell the people that are listening, what is the Children's Lifehouse?
So it's essentially a foster home. It's a normal foster house. this church is building.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the point that Jimmy asked us, it was kind of up in the air on what he wanted or the church's vision on it was.
Mm-hmm.
So after, like, I don't know, probably like a good year of us going back and forth and working with Jimmy on it, it was like, you guys should just become, like, you're going to have to become foster parents.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I figured that's how it would go just because I was a caseworker.
Yeah.
And so then essentially it was like, okay, this is not like a shelter. You guys are going to be foster parents and you can take up to 4 kids because the house is huge. So we could have more kids than like maybe a typical foster home. But that's essentially what started it, kind of developed into just being a foster home. So.
Yeah, I think Jimmy like mentioned it on like a Wednesday night service, or I think we still might have been doing Sunday night services at that time. And he's like, we just purchased this house, and he's like, I got a vision for it. And he kind of talked about it a little bit. And I just looked over at Tab and I said, I don't know at what, point or, how big of it it's going to be, but I feel like we're going to be a part of that. And then I think like the following Sunday, I was downstairs with Children's Church and came up. She goes, well, Jimmy just dropped a bomb on me.
He's really good at that.
Yeah, he's very good at that. So him and I had already been going back and forth on fostering because one of the first things we talked about when we were just dating like 3 months, I was like, I'm just telling you, I don't think I want kids. And so that was a huge conversation we had when we first started dating. So I was like, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste mine.
Yeah.
And he was like, I never really thought about it. Usually you just get married and you have kids.
Yeah.
And I did, that's all
Didn't
I
think
thought
about the
Yeah.
option of like, oh, you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to have kids. So I just told him, like, I've considered fostering. I don't know if that's a thing, adoption. I don't know. I don't think I want to have my own kids. So that was like 3 months in. I'm like, just so you know. And so at this point, like in our marriage, I mean, we've been together for a while at that point. So it had come up a little bit more at this point to where we're like, what if we fostered or what if we adopted? What would that look like? So then when Jimmy started talking about that, I was like, that's so weird. I'm thinking it. And then he looks over and says that. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, okay. Involved. We'll help out.
Yeah.
We'll babysit, the older kids. But then the literal next week, I'm never early to anything ever, probably. And I was early to church, like, quite a bit. And I walked in when Jimmy was sitting in the back praying. And so I was awkwardly going to, like, scoot and walk backwards. Because I was like, oops. Like, But I was like, I got to own it at this point. I've walked in. And there's other people in the church. So I walked in. And he said, hey, Tab, can you come over here for a minute? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And, I was going to apologize. I didn't know what he was going to say. And then he's like asking me about what I'm doing for work. Where do I work? And I'm like telling him, I kind of work with foster kids. I work here. I'm a case manager, for the community and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, And I'm like, oh, no, he's thinking.
All of our fear.
So he starts talking about the house a little bit, and he was like, were you here last week? And and he starts talking to me about it, and he's like, you came in, and I was praying about it, and God told me talk to Tab about it. And I was like, oh gosh, we just bought a house. Like I'm just thinking, like, what does this entail? So he was like, we have a house that we want to have the kids in, so you guys would live there. Do you guys have a house? Yeah, we just bought one. To me, it was like, we would want you to live in the house, and we can work out all of this, but we're working with the Youth Services Bureau, working with DCS, and we could fit. You just asking me again about my job, and I'm like, does he want me to quit my job? panic because I love my job. I love, so I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a thing. And so then he's just like throwing it out like,
yeah, he's already like in phase 6 of this plan.
Yeah, he's already in his head like, you guys are it. And so he's like, you're going to have to talk to Trevor, obviously get him on board. And like, I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this.
And in your head, you're like, oh crap, Trevor just was talking about this last week. Like, Trevor's already a yes.
Yeah, literally. I was like, as soon as Jimmy started talking about it, I was like, Trevor brought it up, and I was like, well, this is it. Like, this is what, because when Jimmy's telling me, I wasn't like, no, immediately no. I was like, no, we're doing this because that's a God thing.
Yeah.
And I felt oddly okay with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was not ideal. We had just got a house. But, yeah, I texted Trevor because I was like, this is a hugest thing, and I was like, the first person you want to talk to. So I'm like texting him while he's downstairs doing the kids' church, and I was like, well, Jimmy just dropped a bomb. Talk to you about it when you get up here. And he's like, oh no. Like, probably the whole time he's like, oh great, what Tab do now? I'm just kidding.
But like you said, like, you felt like a peace about it. And I feel like that's how you really know it's a God thing. Because we've had weird moments like that where things that other people look at us like we're insane. You're like, no, like, there was, like, you just felt like, okay, this is what God's saying. Like, there's no real worry. You're just like, it'll happen. Like, if this is really what God wants, like, it's just going to work out.
Yeah.
So when Jimmy came up to you, Tab, and then at some point you had to go to Trevor and be like, okay, Jimmy just dropped this bomb. When was the moment where you like were 100% in, like, we're doing this? You guys,
probably when we moved in.
You're like, there's no going back now.
Well, I'm gonna go deeper. When we sold our other house, like, we're done.
Yeah, we have no place to live.
Yeah.
I do remember you saying this though, where you were like, once we sell the house, we can't back out.
Like, that was my safety blanket for that whole year.
No, and I definitely understand that aspect. Things when you get to that point when things are getting more real, when now you're selling a property or you're moving into another property, like, there's a point where you're like, okay, we're in 100%. But when was the point, like, okay, we're gonna tell Jimmy that we are 100%?
I don't know if we ever had that conversation.
I think it was just assumed because
Jimmy just rolled with it.
He's a visionary. He's already going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, like, for me, I'm just a person that kind of just puts blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when this was, like, when we discussed it, I was like, okay, yeah, we're doing it. Like, I had this feeling. I was like, I felt like it was God when I told her, we're going to be involved in this. And then now, a week later, Jimmy's talking to us about it. I'm like, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, that's just how it was. All right, we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, the closer it got to it, I was like, oh man, we're doing it. Like, like, just like, I don't know, the way I grew up and stuff like that is like, we bought a house like that. People in my family don't buy houses.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, we have our own property. I got this sweet garage.
Yeah.
I spent so much work putting a pool up in the backyard. Like, we have all this stuff. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, we're leaving that.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving into this house in the middle of town with 0 yard, neighbors on top of you, one-way street parking. And so it's like all this stuff that we had, we don't have anymore. But I just continued with the process. But like the moment of like, oh man, we're doing this, and like the night that we moved everything in, and I was like, yeah, we just packed up our house and we're here now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we were moving, my biggest stipulation was like, I will not be in town. Mm-hmm. I don't want to I don't want to hear the sirens. Mm-hmm. I don't want to hear people out in the street having a time. Like, I just, I will live next door to old people and they can judge my lawn as long as they're quiet.
We've done that. That's really stressful, actually.
That's what he said. Yeah. Well, I got to go out there and mow.
I mow so much from peer pressure.
No, I'm just like, you guys keep quiet and we'll keep quiet. I'm no old person at heart. And then I watched them and what are these neighbors doing? Because I worked from home sometimes.
Yeah.
I had my little bird outside that was always there, nested in our gutters, and I never told him. it was home. Like, and then we moved here, and I'm like, these birds are different. Like,
Yeah.
everybody's different. They're loud. They're not old.
So when you guys get closer and closer to getting to the moving in process, like what do you think you guys were the most scared of? Like, because you guys are having to give up things, and things are getting close. That now it's December and you're gonna open up in February, like that. Things are getting closer. I'm sure there were thoughts running through your guys' heads.
I feel like it kind of like for the point of like getting to move into the house, it's like losing that self security almost, and it's like, okay, well now we're completely trusting in God, because it's like, okay, well, what happens if we don't have the funds for something in the house, or like we're putting all that trust in this ministry and in God. And for me, like that's probably one of my biggest struggles is I'm just a person that I'll just take it all on myself. If something needs done, I'll just go out and do it. Oh, hey, like there's points in my life where I worked 2 jobs, like because I needed the extra income. So it's like actually putting that full trust in that process. But up to the point, I think, with the process of getting our foster care license, it was like just the deep dive that they do into your life. It's like, oh man, am I good enough? We just did all this and we don't get our license.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of scary, just like some of the questions that they would ask. But it's like, and especially being like a Christian ministry also. So it's like we are representative of those values that don't necessarily align with the DCS process to get your license. So it's like, okay, well, if we stand firm with our values, is that going to cost us our license?
Yeah.
Which we had some pretty tough questions along those lines, which I mean, it all worked out, but it was kind of questionable in the midst of it.
Yeah, because afterwards we I'm just honest. I'm just a straightforward person. So afterwards I was like, oh, that might have been on me, because I'm just gonna like look at him, because he's gonna be like, you might have said that. You should have just shut up. Like, no, he wouldn't tell me to shut up, but he would, like, I probably wouldn't have said that much, but he's not gonna talk as much as me anyway. Like, I just wear it all out my sleeve, so I hide nothing. But I think they got so awkward that I'm like, okay, we're rambling because this is awkward.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was just a lot of conversation, even like more with Jimmy, like, hey, we have this job we're going to create for you. And so for me, the biggest scary thing for me was I'm in a job that I love.
Yeah.
I went to school for social work. I eventually was going to get my master's degree. I had this plan to do marriage and family therapy. So eventually, like, we are settling into our house, and I'm going to do classes. I'm going to get my master's degree or something. I'm going to do more. And then Jimmy's like, oh, you could do. I was going to go part-time in my job, but then I didn't know if I could, because I was a community caseworker. I work around my family's schedules. If I want to be home in the evening, but I got to be home with, or I got to be at work to work with the kids when they get out of school, or their families when they get off work, kind of like puts into like our schedule with foster kids. So Jimmy's like, oh, we have a job already that we want to create. Like, we need this position. And I'm like, and this is where I got to humble myself. I pray about it, but I was like, I went and got my degree and you want me to answer phones? And then like, he's old school. So he's like, it's like a secretary. And I'm like, Pam from The Office. She literally says, do I want to do this my whole life? And I'm like, that's me. That's like literally what I'm doing. And so I had to pray about that a lot too, because I was like, I need to humble myself. I had a lot of pride about it, because I was like, I worked my butt off to get my degree. So the work I wanted to do additionally to get my master's degree. So for me, it was, I'm giving up a job. And then literally when we were like, that we're moving, like I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start at the church. My boss is telling us that we're getting raises.
You're like, no.
This is a good raise, babe.
Yeah.
It's God
like
calling.
it's that one like ultimate test at the end where it's just like, here.
Yeah,
Sure?
I knew it was not God when that raise came through. I was like, that's a temptation.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can stay at this job. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
I
can
can
make this
figure it
work.
out.
Mm-hmm.
And so no, like that was my thing. Was like I don't want to work part time because I'm an independent woman that don't need no man. Like, I was like, this is a big thing for me to have to like put a lot of this on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then also trust even more, like he was saying, on God. Like, for me, it's like I will have to really put my pride aside and focus on God, not run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because like the first week that we got our license, I was still like, we're in the house. We are moved in. We have furniture. We're sitting on the furniture, and it's like Trevor had brought up a conversation, and I overthink and process everything. And he's a man of few words. So his man of few words, and I think I was panic texting Savannah at the same time.
Probably.
And so I was like, he's like, so we got to figure out like what we're going to do with finances. And I'm like, oh, we're struggling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can't sell our house. We need to call Jimmy right now. Jimmy, I'm like crying. Jimmy, we can't do it. Trevor says like we gotta talk about finances. We're struggling. We can't do this anymore. I'm so sorry. We just picked up like we have our furniture in here. We can't sell our house. And he's like, well, what is it? Jimmy's even keel. He's not gonna panic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling him, I'm panicking. Like I'm literally Trevor's just sitting there like.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you texted me and said, I just panic called Jimmy. And I'm like, oh no.
I was like, I know Savannah was there because I was like, I don't know who else could panic as much.
We definitely bonded because I had similar panics at one point. So I was like, hey, I can talk you off the ledge because I know what this feels like. And we were fine. So
I think that's why I was texting you because you guys kind of did the same thing. We were getting houses at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys had done this like the year before.
And then God calls you to something and you're like, time to sell this thing I worked really hard for.
Yes. And so I was like, Savannah, like, I am actually panicking.
Yeah.
And so then we got off Jimmy's like, we'll talk, we'll get it figured out. He's all like chill about it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I called you at 8:30 at night panicking. And then like hung up and I looked at Trevor and I was like, well, I'm okay now.
Relatable.
And I'm like, but let's actually talk. What did you mean? Because as soon as he said it, I'm like off the ledge. I'm like, he's all head first. Mm-hmm. Trevor's like confident. When he has a decision made, he's just going for it. No, I'm like, what could go wrong if we go this way? What could go wrong if we go that way? What happens if we go this way? Mm-hmm. No, not Trevor. He's like, I've already jumped. Yeah. You just gotta get jumped.
Phil, is that you?
Yeah, honestly. I think you even said that.
Literally, yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta catch up and pull him back from the ledge. Like,
you're like, you don't want to do this.
Yeah, so I mean, that for me was like, worrying even in the house, and I'm still like, I gotta trust God, and I'm always in control. Like, this sucks, but I knew that feeling when we first talked to Jimmy was peace.
Yeah.
I was just choosing to ignore that peace and create chaos.
Well, obviously, you have gotten past the chaos. You have worked through those moments of panic. I'm sure moments of panic still come up. But obviously, it doesn't just stop once, like, kids walk in the door. Like, challenges change. So what did it look like once you started bringing kids in the house? Because obviously, you guys don't have your own kids. Mm-hmm. You've not been parents before. So now there's like, here's your first placement. What was that like?
It was a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, we got probably, it was like a very extreme case in the sense of violence, I guess. Like the parents had like, said that they're going to like be combative with DCS.
Yeah.
Like it was like in the courtroom. They're like, hey, you guys just need to watch out. Maybe when you go pick the kids up from their meeting, take a couple trips around the block before you go immediately home.
That's reassuring.
Okay. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
They're like,
I quit.
yeah. So that was definitely get your feet wet quick
Mm-hmm.
with that situation. But I think that it was definitely a challenge going from having no kids to, oh, hey, now we have a 7 and 6-year-old, or what?
Yeah, 9 and 6.
Yeah. So, like, I think, like, the day after we got them, I'm like, oh, yeah, we need to get, like, food for kids.
We had to get
You
a
know, like
booster seat.
snacks. We
Yeah.
had to have booster seat. Oh, hey, we need a step stool because their face doesn't even go above the sink.
We took these kids outside of like our age range that we kind of worked with Jimmy on.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to take the teens because that's the need that DCO said they had was for teens.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we were like, we'll do 11 and up.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously 9 and 6 was not what we were prepared for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on our own, we were like, let's just take these kids. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to not slander DCS because it's like they have a very hard job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the details that we got beforehand versus when we already had the kids in the house, like the violence and stuff like that, like I found out the day that we had accepted, and I don't know if they were at school and we were going to go pick them up, or they had already been at the house and they were at school the next day, and the caseworker had come to the house and was talking to me, and she's telling me about what happened at court and how the mom had threatened us already, and I'm like, okay, cool. Love that for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I have to tell this to Trevor, and
Mm-hmm.
as this is going on,
Mm-hmm.
we've already accepted it and we're finding stuff out as we go. So that was a challenge. And I feel like a lot of it, even now, it is sometimes the kids can be a challenge because we've taken almost all kids that are outside the range that we've agreed on.
Yeah.
And that's a lot because that's his age. He loves that age, and I'm like, give me the teens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're chill. And he's like, obviously he does the children's church, so that's his age range. But for me, it's like, that was the tough age, but the parents can be the toughest.
Yeah.
Like the bio parents,
Mm-hmm.
I think, in DCS. It's never really the kids that ever make me lose my mind or get so mad or frustrated or anything, because they're kids.
Yeah.
They're teens. They've been through things that are not their fault.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But can DCS give me a little bit more information? Probably.
Yeah.
Can the parents do things better? Yes. So I think that's been the biggest challenge, is not necessarily the kids.
Mm-hmm.
It is adapting to being a parent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's adapting to, because we are now co-parent.
Yeah.
It's like we're a divorced couple that has to work with.
Yeah. No, I
You know what I mean?
know.
That's actually such a good way to explain it,
Yeah.
because I never thought of it like that, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that either, and I think that is a good way to put it.
That's
when
how
you're
I think.
when you're talking about the dynamic between the bio parent and you guys, and now these kids, and you also have DCS that's a part of all that
Yeah.
too. I'm sure that is actually very difficult.
Yeah, because you, the first couple kids that we had, like, we're not probably gonna, like, especially the first two, we're not gonna be best friends with the parents. They're already threatening us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But in our training and issues with us, it's like eventually we wanted to work. Like the first several months, we're like, we're gonna see how the relationship goes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're not gonna give them our phone number. We're not gonna give them like our personal information. We will talk on a need to know basis.
Mm-hmm.
Because I worked this job. I worked with the bio parents before at my other job. I know the crazy stuff that goes on, the sneakiness. And I just told him, and I wasn't trying to scare him, but I just need to give you a reality here.
Mhm.
Because he's so confident. And I was like, I'm not working with these kids anymore. They're going to be living with me, and I have to actively deal with the clients that I've worked with before.
Mhm.
So that was my biggest thing, going into it, was being scared. But then when we were actually in it too, it was like, I was friends with the DCS caseworkers, and now they are my enemies. They're not really my enemies. It's just tough.
It's just a very different relationship than you were used to having, so that dynamic completely shifts.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially when they talk to you like, well, I'm not going to get into that. That was bad. Well, I was just like, it's like going from being like we're in this together to now you are just my work.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
that mentality in general. I get the mentality. I'm just too friendly. So I'm like, why can't we be friends? Like, I'm not saying like call me up. I'm just saying like, why are you like, call me this, don't call me that. So it's been tough. Like there's been a lot of like instances where I'm like, this is tough working with DCS. This is tough working with like parents that are sneaky.
Yeah.
And the kids just learn from that, and then they bring it into the house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the hardest part. Even now is the kids have already learned this behavior, and they'll love their parents unconditionally, no matter if they've done these terrible things or not.
Yeah, growing up, because I've seen a lot of kids I knew, family members go in and out of foster care because parents were either doing drugs or they got thrown in jail or lots and lots of different scenarios. And there is it's interesting to me, but I also get it at the same time. Is no matter, and I shouldn't say this isn't not all the time, but I'd say a lot of the times, kids that come from those types of homes will do whatever it takes to be with that parent, even if they're not a good parent. And I'm sure, because they, I watch kids, they run away or they sneak out or from their foster parents trying to get back to, their biological parents, even if they're being abused in lots of different ways. And, that's tough. That's tough. The house started last year, in 2024, February of 2024, right? That's when it officially opened.
It officially
January,
opened.
late January.
Yeah, we moved in the year before.
Yeah,
but we officially got our license. Yeah.
How long did it take to get the first child into the house? Yeah, within just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So you started being parents within a couple weeks. So it's been over a year since you guys have been doing that. How has your life changed? Because I'm sure it's changed in lots. You were young adults with no kids, and now you're over 30.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Why do you say it like that?
You're still young adults. Hey, yeah, we're young.
We can still hold on to that for a little longer.
No, but now your life is completely, I'm sure, changed.
Yeah.
Well, in what ways has it? Trevor?
Yeah, I was like, pretty much.
I mean, in just about every way possible, you go from, hey, it's Saturday, we have no plans, and we just make plans on the whim, to, oh, hey, we have a 9 and 6 year old, we can't just go do whatever we want. Now we have 2 kids. Now we have to think about everything with 2 kids. And then, as the ages differ and you get into teens, it is a lot nicer to be able to go and have trust with them. Like, hey, we're going to run uptown and grab something to eat real quick. You can stay at home, or, things like that. But just everything, you go from worrying about yourselves to, oh, hey, now I'm responsible for 2 to 4 more people in my house. Yeah. And then also a big aspect for me is just learning to be spiritually responsible for more people.
Yeah.
Which is a very big task and very important, because you hear a lot of horror stories of like kids who have been through the system who are like, oh yeah, my foster parents were religious and we had to do, very strict stuff. And so now they have this very bad outlook on like Christianity and things like that. So it's like a fine line, I feel like, that you have to travel, in my opinion, because I don't want to do that. I want them to have a positive outlook.
Yeah.
But I also want to give them like subtle challenges along the way. And it's been very rewarding to see them open up and talk to us about things, you know, because I think that it is a process. You know, sometimes it's not going to happen, you know, like a flip of a switch. But it's nice to know that, you know, we've been a good base for that foundation for them, maybe. You know, so.
Yeah, I think Trevor and I are spontaneous, and I've talked to this, like, to you.
Yeah.
I'm okay with, like, flying off the seat of my pants, for the most part. Like, if we're going on a trip somewhere serious, then it's like, okay, give me a little rough outline here. But for the most part, it's like, hey, it's 10 o'clock. You want to just go get something to eat now? Because, like, we'll just be chilling, hanging out, playing video games, or, like, I'm reading, or I don't know, like, we had our own house. We're just vibing, you know? And then at 10 o'clock, it's like, hey, you want to go get, like, a sweet treat or something?
Yeah.
And so then when, we have 2 kids now, it's like, we can't just leave the house at 10 o'clock and go do this. Or
I think, like, we're in the process of our licensing, you know, like, we're having dinner at, like, 8:30, and I was like, you know, I just realized that we can't do this.
Yeah. They're getting started.
You know, we can't have dinner at 8:30 at night. They have school. We got to have, you know, work on having, like, a more schedule and a better routine with things and stuff like that.
Because he gets home late, I got home late, because at the time, obviously, I worked some nights until 7 or 8 o'clock, depending on my families. And then he would, like, cook from home or something for us, or we just figure it out on the fly. But then it's like, okay, what are we doing tonight? And I'm like, oh, we have to plan every night.
I mean, we watched our nephew for like 4 days, and even now alone, I was like, oh, this is a lot. Because we're the same way, where it's like, we might not make dinner till 7:30. Yeah. We do the late night Dairy Queen runs, and it's like, oh, like, he has a bedtime that's like pretty early. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, he's sleeping, so do we need to go to bed at 9 o'clock? Because, like, what if we're too loud and we wake him up? Like, we were just thrown in, so I totally get
I am
that.
very much a night owl type of person.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I'll be up till midnight, 1 o'clock at times. But when we had our nephew, like, I was going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, we'd sit and watch TV, but, like, at a very low volume, because we're like, we don't want to disturb him. Like, he has school tomorrow, and he gets up so early for school.
Yeah, like, I mean, I can't remember if we went to bed or changed anything. I think, like...
And not me, I go to bed.
I was like, I can't remember what I do, because I'm a night owl. He's in bed by 9. Yeah. If he can. On a good night, he's in bed by 9. Yeah. So, like, you know, eating at 8:30 and then going right to bed. That's insane. But I think that was a big change, because I'm up late reading a book or just chilling. And so that's a big change. But I think for me, like, I grew up in the church. I grew up going to church. Obviously, like, my dad, when I was a teenager, my dad was like, you're going to church. And then when you're 18, you can decide if you want to continue. But as long as you're living here, you're going to church. So for me, then it's like, oh, man, like, I was kind of a little, like, rebel. So, like, I'm sure, like, when I was a kid, I was like, I'm not going to make my kids do this or that. But then now I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, what if they don't want to go to church? Yeah. Like, they're going to go to church as long as they live with us, but we're not going to make them do anything they don't want to do otherwise. Like, you have to come to church, and you can just sit there and hate it. But you're just going to come to church. Because that was the big thing I thought about. I was like, I don't want to be, like, pushy. But you're living in our house, and we're going to make you a part of the family. And our family goes to church. And so we're not going to exclude you from family things because you don't want to do it. Because there's a lot of things growing up you don't want to do. Oh, we have to go on this family vacation. It's going to suck. You know, I don't want to do the family reunion. Grandma sucks. Like, you know... You still got to go see grandma. Just suck it up and deal with it. So you're going to go to church. We've never had issues. Like, obviously, do you think a 96-year-old want to go sit through Wednesday night service? No. Like, they did not. I mean, obviously, like, some nights we're carrying them out.
I was like, a lot of times they fell asleep.
Yeah.
It was very cute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you're having to lug them out.
Yeah. The 2 boys that we first had, they were hooped.
Yeah.
They had a lot of energy. But, you know, when we got them to go to church. I think they liked going to church on like Sunday mornings or whatever. I
And there's
didn't
stuff
think
for
they
the
got to
kids.
go but once though, because they had visits and stuff.
Yeah.
But being around other kids, they were great with other kids.
Mhm.
They were
They
great.
would probably
with
love
church.
Wednesdays now.
I know.
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
know,
I
it's
was like, we didn't
changed
have
now.
anything for kids when you were having the little kids there.
Yeah.
That was another crazy thing, is that the first 2 sets of kids that we had actually came to church and had been in children's
Yeah.
church.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was like, pretty crazy, because it was like our first set, we do the Bible bucks, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wait, why is your name up here? You don't have a very common name.
Yeah.
He's like, I think I've been here before. I'm like, oh well, apparently you have. Yeah. I was like, wow, that's crazy, you know. And then the other 2, I was like, you know what? I feel like I definitely remember you, because they had language barriers, and I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, there was one kid
Mhm.
down here that just didn't speak English,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm starting to remember things.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because they did VBS.
Yeah, I remember
And
him
yeah.
from VBS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were buck wild then. You're buck wild now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still the same kid.
So let me ask you guys what I think, honestly, would be the biggest challenge. And I know you guys haven't been doing it for a super long time, and I'm sure you'll figure out like the boundaries and how to do it. But personally, what I think would be the most difficult, and you have experienced it, so you do know, you don't have these kids forever.
Mm.
Like, you build relationships with them, and some of them are not very long. Some of them come and go, but some of them you have for a long time. What has it been like to bring children in, but then have to say goodbye?
That's loaded because obviously all the cases are different.
Mhm.
So we've had 7 kids total. Our first 2 were only with us for a week.
Mm-hmm.
That one was tough because they were our first kids and they were great kids.
Yeah.
Obviously, our 6-year-old, she was crazy. She was so much fun, but she was crazy. She was like full of energy all the time, but she just like was your best friend immediately. She wanted to be your best friend immediately. She was very trusting of people in a scary way almost. Like,
Yeah.
the biggest thing I just remember, and it is a little bit off topic, was because I had a foster kid that I was working with at my job
Mm-hmm.
that started calling his foster parents mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming home like after meeting with him, and I was like, he's already calling them mom and dad, and it's been a week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so like, I don't know if they're making him call them this. I don't know. It was so crazy because then we get our first fosters, and she's calling us. Well, she was calling me mom. I don't remember if she ever ended up saying dad. I was like, I think eventually she did, but like 1 week.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm not. The biggest thing that I learned is just don't say anything. Let them call you what they want,
Mm-hmm.
and just deal with it, because it's up to them to make themselves comfortable. If they feel comfortable calling you that, just leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't imagine saying, don't call me that. Like, I don't know. It was awkward. It was tough. But then at the end of that week, they're going with their family. So we felt better. We were nervous because of obviously the violent stuff that we'd already like heard about their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So then to hear they're going with like the siblings of the mom and dad. How are they? Like, so we got to meet them, and we didn't necessarily want to, but we did. We wanted to go in with the kids. We didn't want to just drop them off and leave. So we did, and we felt a million times better after we met who they were going to live with. So that one was fine. Obviously, we still were worried because you just never know if it's a front or not. But I think we kind of walked away and were like, she's mentioned some things that kind of made us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was just unique because it was our first kids. It was the craziest. You're just thrown in,
Mm-hmm.
and then she's calling you mom, calling you dad, and we're like, but our next two were the toughest because we had them a lot. We had them, 3 months, 4 months. And we, like I said, they were a hoot. They were fun. They had a lot of energy. And we got really close with them when we took them out and did a lot of things, like hanging out with them. But they were already pretty close to going home anyway. So that one was tough. I didn't think that, like, it was going to be that tough because in my mind it's 3 or 4 months. That's a big thing for them. 3 or 4 months is a big thing for kids. But for us, it wasn't like, it was a long time because obviously we hadn't had kids. But when we left there, I was like, this sucks. Because the youngest jumped off the porch. I said, okay, we're going to leave. And I said, are you guys going to give us a hug before you leave? And he comes running and jumps off the porch, and I catch him. And he was my little buddy.
I'd be like, it's fine. I'm just going to cry
and
now.
so I literally tried not to because all of their family was, like, there when they got home. And so that was, like, it was awkward because they're all watching. But, like, that was tough. That was like, all right, thanks for shattering my heart. You know, like, and so then we get in the car and it's like, just quiet drive home.
Yeah.
Like, that was awkward. And this is weird. And, like, we're not going to make this drive again. And so then, like, by then we had 4 kids at that point. We had our 2 youngest and then we have our 2 teens. So, like, I'm like, I'm not going to go in the house crying like a crazy person. But I was crying. And I didn't think that I would. I knew I was going to miss some, but I didn't think I was going to cry.
Yeah, I think it's you know, varying degrees of being tough, you know, depending on how long, stuff like that. But for me, it's just like continuing to just trust God's process. Like, we're here at this house, and I feel like these kids, you know, unfortunate circumstances, but we're in each other's lives for a shared period of time. So it's like, I'm grateful for that time, and it's going to be tough regardless, but, you know, it's just all part of God's plan, and just continuing to trust in the process. You know?
Yeah.
So we've been on a bit of a downer for a little bit with all these challenges, and now Tab is trying to make me cry thinking about these goodbyes. It's fine.
It's the hormones.
It's the hormones. I
That's
cry
what-
easily. But kind of switching gears then, obviously there's a lot of good that is coming from doing this. Like, you're getting to kind of invest in these lives of these kids, even if it's only for a week. What has just been, like, some of your favorite memories, I guess, from doing this, either just with the kids or just with each other? Like, what's been some of those highlights?
Oh, okay. So, like, I have it
She's
recorded
ready.
on my phone already. So, the 2 boys that we got are their 2 siblings that we got. Like, we had the boy and a girl, and then we had 2 boys. Obviously, you know them. The oldest one, I think this is the most hilarious thing ever, and I can't even remember the name, and so the story kind of sucks, but I have an Alexa, and so they figured out how to ask Alexa questions, and he couldn't remember what Alexa's name was, so he had this random name he was calling, and he kept saying it over and over. Hey, something and something. I can't remember. I have it recorded. It was so funny. And then his younger brother's like, who is he talking about? And I'm like laughing in the other room. And I was like, who are you talking to? And he's like, the speaker won't talk. Like, that was hilarious to me because then we were just like referencing Alexa as this name from then on. But that was hilarious. I cannot remember the name. The name is what made it funny. So the story does suck. But like, that was hilarious. But those 2 were fun because they were stressful because I'm like, go to bed. But, like, when they're up and you have energy, it's fun. But, like, trying to get them to take a shower and take a bath, that's challenging because you're like, go in there, just, like, pray you know how to take a shower and take a bath on your own. But to just get them to get in there, because I taught them the bubbles. That was funny. We got the 2 teens. They came a couple weeks. I don't know. It had been maybe like a month or so, 2 after we had the younger. We got our 2 teens. And so, like, the 2 teens, they're broody. They're not going to talk. And so I was filling up the bubble bath, and I was blowing bubbles at our youngest. And then we had the door open, so here comes our oldest teen. broody in his hat. And I said, go blow bubbles at him. And so he takes an armful of bubbles and just goes all over him. And it's the first time he smiled.
Oh.
The first time he ever smiled was when our youngest 6-year-old runs in and goes and does that. So then I was like, oh my gosh, he smiled. Bubbles bring smiles. Like,
We were having bubbles for every bath.
Yeah, I know. And he hated bubbles too because he was already complaining. He's like, not the bubbles. Like he hated bubbles in the bubble bath.
Yeah, started his bath, and because we had put a bunch in there just to make sure he's getting,
We don't know if
soapy
they're
and
clean.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so he'd be like, don't put no bubbles in there. Yeah, I won't do it.
And you're like secretly just
I'm
dumping them in.
Hey, go upstairs and get your towel. And so he'd go running, and I'd just pour a bunch of soap in there, and he'd be like, come back, he'd go,
Bubbles.
every single night.
That's so funny.
And we don't know what happened.
Yeah,
he would investigate too. He's like
looking around.
Bubble
He'd
bath?
always put his finger up.
Yeah, that was funny.
That is funny.
Yeah.
So, how do you guys feel like during this whole process, now that you guys have been doing it, do you guys feel like you guys are closer as a married couple through this process?
Yeah,
You feel like it's made you stronger, and if so, what ways?
in an odd way, really.
I feel like a lot of aspects, just because going back to like feeling like that divorced co-parent type deal. It's like as much as we're there for the kids and we invest in them, we also have to be there for each other at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like we both go through our own struggles with everything, and it's nice to be able to confide in each other and talk about things and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean it's been odd because I feel like we bicker more, but it's in a good way because it's like we need to talk about this obviously, and then we have a hard conversation, especially on like, I don't agree with this. I don't know why you did that. Like, and then he's like, well, I look at it like this. And I'm like, well, I look at it like that. And so like it opens up a lot of communication on why you think the way you think and why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking, instead of just, because I do a lot of assumption. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm like, oh, that's how you feel, and in my mind, that's how I'm taking it. And the big thing about communication is you need to understand how that person is trying to communicate it to you, not how you perceive it. Because how you perceive it could totally be the opposite of how they meant it.
Maybe I should soak this in.
Well, yeah, like
a words of advice for myself. Okay,
it's not to be like preachy, but really, like I had to learn that, and I know it. You could know it, and you still just don't apply it. Because I do a lot. Like I took a lot of marriage and relationship classes in school, and they don't apply to me.
You're like, that's great advice.
No,
for
that's
someone
nice.
else.
You need to apply it, baby.
Yeah, I think I just remember like one of the big, like the first times was our oldest did something, and it was like pretty much just disregarding what Tab had told him. He just completely disregarded it, and we were on our way out the door to church, and so it happened. And so, like, sometimes I'm more of like a process, because I have to process how I'm going to deal with this. And because sometimes I can have, a lot of emotion with things. And I'm like, with these kids, I gotta make sure we're doing it the right way. And so it happened right in front of me, and Tab goes out the front door, and I was like, hey, dude, like, she told you to do that. You need to listen to her. You have to follow rules and direction. You can't just blow her off. Like, there's going to be discipline to that if it continues. And so she didn't realize that I had a conversation with him. And so it was like later we're grabbing lunch, I think. We went to grab lunch, and she just like looks at me just like furious, just letting me have it, just going in on me. I'm like, I talked to him. She's like, what are you talking about? You didn't talk to him. I'm like, yeah, you walked out the door, and I was talking to him by the time you're already out the door. She's like, well, I didn't realize that.
Well, it's like, I think I'm not saying it's wrong, because I probably should take a step back sometimes and just chill. But I'm quick with it. If somebody says something to me that's kind of snappy, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna snap back. Like, no, Trevor's like thinking about it, and I'm like, say something. Yeah. And, he's not. And so I was like, teenagers, their attitude. And I was like, I had attitude when I was a teenager. I'm just going to walk away because I had attitude when I was a teenager. I know I can beat you at this attitude game. So I was like, I'm just going to step away from this because he's blatantly disregarding me. And I did not. In my life, I was like, I knew it was going to happen, but it happened in the moment. I was like, what do I do now? He's just like blatantly disregarding me. And so I was like, oh, great. And so I was like, I don't even know what to say. But the fact that Trevor didn't say anything, now I'm a little mad because, like, you're my husband. You're supposed to have my back. And the boys a lot of the kids that we get do not have father figures. I'm going to say about all of them do not had like maybe they had like a father that would come in and out, but all 7 of them did not have a dad that was actively seeing them at all the visits.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't think any of them had a dad that went to every single visit except for maybe the first. That was touch and go. Yeah, that whole thing was wild. I wouldn't even say that. So Trevor is an anomaly. Because he's a father figure, and they're like, well, how do we react and respond? Yeah. They have a single mom that's just their that kids treat differently. That's not really like a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then to me, it's like, well, they see women differently, especially our oldest. That one was tough because it was like women are this in this section. And men are in this, and men work, and women stay at home, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what do you know about work, buddy? Like, let's talk about it. But, so that moment there, like, I knew it was coming, because you can tell when the way he talked was like, we're going to have a problem because I'm a woman. Mm. So that sucked. But, yeah, I did not hear him going out the door. I do remember that. That sucked, too. But I think we've had a lot of conversation now that's, like, miscommunication because we have never usually we can tell what the other one means now at this point. Like, did I like the way he said it? No, but I know he didn't mean it. But when you're now trying to discipline and he handles it away, I'm like, what? I don't even know what he means. How are they supposed to know what he means? So then it's like, well, why did you do that? Why did you say it like that? Sometimes I'm just going to shut up and not say anything. And so then it's like, okay, we got to figure out how to communicate about discipline. And we've never obviously had to talk about that. With our younger kids, it was a little bit easier because they're younger kids and all of them pretty much just listened. And if they didn't, it's like, hey, you need to go chill. Go to your room and just hang out. No iPad, no TV, just go chill. When you have teenagers, it's insane. It's a whole nother ballpark.
I think another component to it is you can't parent these kids how you were parented.
Yeah.
Because it's just a completely different set of rules, especially when it comes to discipline. So it's like when I was a kid, I knew butt whooping was gracious. It's like, okay, but you can't do that with these kids.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely been a big challenging part. Because one of our younger kids, he was just having a tantrum one time. And we're going up, he's just super mouthing off. And I was like, all right, well, you're not getting your tablet. He just kept going. I said, all right, well, you're grounded for the day. All right, well, you're grounded for the week. He just kept going. And I was like, when you get inside, you just need to go upstairs, dude. And so I'm sitting there, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to go up and talk to him because this is very not normal for him. I'm going to have a conversation with him. Let's figure out what's upsetting him. Because, at the end of the day, these kids are going through a lot. Especially at that point in time, he was going on visits, having visits more than they were with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, a 9-year-old kid going, he wants to be home.
Yeah.
He's seeing his family more than he's seeing us. He's very confused. So it's like compassion and just understanding is something that I've grown in a lot, because you have to really take that into consideration with these kids. And especially like with older kids, they've had 15, 16 years of doing things a certain way that's just how they do things.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have the same manners or morals or, you know, things like that as we do, even to like things that you would think of as like common sense. You know, like, oh, you should just know this. I shouldn't have to tell you this. That's another like big struggle that I've had, is I shouldn't have to tell you this. You should know this. You know, it's like, why do I have to have a simple conversation? Oh, well, they didn't grow up like I did. And so that's another big learning curve. And the kids that we've had, especially long term, it's been a very big learning curve. But we've been gracious enough to have good kids, you know. And even though we've probably gone through everything that you can think of, it's still a good process.
Yeah, like I had, like, when I was working my job, I'm like, we're gonna get these kids, and this is gonna be, we're gonna fight, we're gonna have a strained marriage, because I would tell them about a girl I was working with, and I'm like, some of the stuff she did, and like, I could go home at the end of the day at my job, but this person will be living with us. So I was worried, but we've had amazing kids. And I know it won't always be kids that are this, like, chill. Our teens do typical teen things. Does it get frustrating? Is it like, really? Do we have to talk about that? Really? Are we talking about this odd weirdo thing? Like, because they're teenagers, too. So, like, teen boy stuff. It's like, that's disgusting. You know what I mean? And so, like, it's typical teen things. And so at the end of the day, that's like literally what I say. I'm like, it's just a typical teen thing. It's fine. But is it kind of like frustrating in the moment, or like, why? Yes. Yes, it is. But then I just am like, that's a teen thing. The grounding thing, like, they've never been grounded ever. They've been grounded so much. Like,
you know, you ground them, they're like, what do I do? I've never been grounded.
What does that mean?
Oh, okay.
And so we were like thinking everybody's been grounded.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just leave the house and go hang out with a friend. Why are you asking?
But I have a snap streak of 500. That's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that ended.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about it. He's like, yeah, my snap streak ended. And we're like, well, why? Because you took my phone away.
Oh, yeah.
But it's weird, though, also, because, like, I'm going to say this. I'm not old, but I am. I don't know. I'm not old. I'm just kidding. But I feel like I'm still, like, 25 or something. And so to just be, like, so closer in age and know, like, I have Snapchat. I grew up with all of these things. I'm a millennial. Like, Snapchat was coming out when I was in, high school, probably?
Probably.
We Snapchatted in high school.
Yeah.
That's insane. They Snapchat. Instagram, like, Facebook. We had that, so, like, I'm actively looking at posts from when I was 15, 16 while I have a 15 and 16-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird. So just delete.
Yeah.
But, like, you get it because, like, that's what I mean. Like, it's frustrating because it's typical teen things, but then you're looking at it. I'm like, oh, look, I posted this little wine
Your
bag
memory
song.
comes up and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
no.
Like, when I was mad at my parents and I posted this song, like, the world is ending.
Yeah.
Nobody understands me, and then we'll see his Instagram, the world is ending song or whatever. But if my parents had Facebook back in the day, I'd be in so much trouble. They saw songs I posted. Like, because at that time, I'm just 15, 16. I didn't, like, listening thing probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
You're a
And
rebel.
so like now, the biggest thing for us now is like we'll see songs that he posts and we're like, this is E for explicit. You shouldn't be, or like what do we do? That's a tough one right now.
Yeah.
Because we had that when we were a kid, but now all parents have social media too.
Yeah.
But when we were kids, parents did not know about
you could get
social
away
media.
with it.
Yeah. Social media was like very new when we were kids. So it's just been very weird. And it's tough. But it's typical teen and stuff. We're still just trying to figure it out. And maybe in a year we'll have a better idea.
Yeah.
But
At
it's
some
like,
point you'll figure it out.
yeah, it's like where's the
hopefully.
line where we're like, we're your parent, but we know we're not.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still like, because he said the other day, sorry, it's a little sidetrack, but he called us his parents, like to his teacher, like our foster parents. Like usually before we're like, you can call us like aunt and uncle or something, because we still never really figured it out. Like they didn't want to talk about what to call us.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could call us like your aunt and uncle or like guardians or something, but when it comes to the school, you can't just say guardians, because guardians really don't have as much say. I can't remember how it was. Like in some aspects, we can't be their guardian. We have to be foster parents.
Yeah.
And that was tough to like for them to say. Now I think, because he was like, I told my teacher my foster parents had to do some dumb like thing we had to help him with for homework. That thing was goofy. He was like, yeah, I tried to tell my foster parents about it and stuff and blah blah blah. And I'm like, he referred to us as his foster parents.
Aww.
I know it's like it was
He
like
likes
nice.
you.
Because usually he was like, the people that I
Like these random people
Yeah.
just here.
yeah. So like for him, you get these teens that are finally like a little bit, but then like
Yeah.
you take that step forward, and then the next day does something, you're like, okay, well, that's down the drain.
Yeah.
So, how do you guys feel like your walk with Christ, your Christian walk, how is it strengthened through this whole process?
A lot of relying on God.
Yeah.
A lot of prayer.
Yeah. Especially like just praying about how to handle situations for sure. Yeah. I think, and like I said earlier, just trying to get them involved in certain aspects and stuff like that, and just trying to be prepared for questions that they do ask. I think, and in general, I think Christians, you should be reading and growing. And so it's like now, not only for myself, I have to do that. I have to do that for other people.
Yeah.
So,
I think we have to be more mindful too, because things you can say to your spouse, you realize you probably shouldn't say in front of a teenager or a kid. Even though it's not necessarily bad per se, it's an adult conversation. So being more mindful of how we speak about others in general, because we're Christians. That one's like, hey, we shouldn't say that. Or in my mind, I think, I shouldn't say this in front of them. I'll wait and tell Trevor later. Because we just took them to church and I'm upset about something, or my job. This happened and I'm frustrated, and I don't want them to hear frustrations about the church. It's not even about the church. It's about something that happened, but I don't want them to jump to any type of conclusion. Because everybody has something at work that they complain about. But when you work for a church, my mind is like, I don't want to ever complain about the church because I work there. But if something happens, it's not even necessarily like coworkers. It's like somebody came in.
Yeah. Like our job, you say the church, but we just deal with the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
And beforehand, like I worked for a nonprofit, but it wasn't faith-based necessarily, and it wasn't like a church or anything. But I always try to remember to not speak in a way that they can take it wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm not complaining about the church, but I don't want them to ever think that I am. Because I work at the church. So for me, it's like him, like we work with a lot of community, but we also have like the other houses. I'm not going to try to complain about this person in front of them, because they know who that person is. And I think that like for me in general, it can come off as like gossip. and I don't want it to be gossip. I want it to be like, this happened at work today and I'm stressed, or it made me frustrated because we talk about our days. So I think that has been a big thing for me in my walk, is trying to make them see that I'm not gossiping and like keeping that separate from them. And it can be tough because like I just come home and I'm just saying what I'm saying, but I have to be careful because they soak up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you're trying to be a good role model of a Christian to kids who probably don't know what that should even look like.
They have a very adult relationship with their mom, and I don't agree with being a friend. I feel like I should be a parent first. And then when we're adults, then we can be friends, but when you're a kid, I'm your parent. And I don't want to have a conversation and talk to you about somebody. This is something I would talk to my husband about because that's my husband. So I think that's a big thing too, is because they want to know everything. What are you talking about? What are we doing? Who is that? Who's this? They know people's names at churches. Even if they don't talk to people, they know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to be careful about if it could come off as gossip to them, because I don't want that to come off as gossip to them. So for me, being more mindful of how I speak has been a good thing, especially because you don't realize before how probably I shouldn't have been saying blah, 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 blah. Even if it's just a Trevor, it gets kind of like a negativity for me too. And I'll just soak into that negativity, and I just get a bad outlook on things. So for me personally, just growing and being more mindful of how I speak and talk about others, or how I'm speaking out loud, and I just think later, I probably should just shut up next time. So I think that's been a big thing for me, is just like how we speak in front of the kids, and then like how the image of our Christian image for them, because I don't want them to have a bad negative outlook on what Christians should be. And Christians really shouldn't be gossiping. Christians really shouldn't be like complaining and negative. And so even if it's not supposed to be like that, I don't even want them to be able to take it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up this podcast, which you've shared a lot with us, and we appreciate the honesty and just opening up to us. Again, you guys have been doing this for over a year now. What's that one thing you want people to know about whether that's maybe somebody who's thinking about being a foster parent, maybe it's a thing that somebody should be, I don't know if this is the best word to use, but looking out for, or whatever. What's that one thing, if you had a chance to say one thing to somebody that was kind of talking about going into fostering, what would that be?
For me, I think it would be as difficult as it can be at times. I think it's a bigger impact to have such a positive influence in a child's life, no matter the amount of time, whether it be a week or a year. I think that child will always remember and can reflect back on that time, because you don't necessarily know where that kid is going into, whether they're getting reunified with their parents, if that situation is going to continue to progress, or it worsens. You don't know what the parent, sometimes you don't fully know the situations. These kids, we've had a kid that came out of a condemned house where a lot of drugs were being manufactured. Okay, he spent 2 weeks with us. Maybe that's the first time in his life that he's sat down and had a family meal. We talked about prayer with him. We took him to church. Maybe, down his later in life, hey, these people that I lived with, they spoke about Jesus. What, maybe that's something I've been missing, something in my life. Maybe I can look into that. Hey, they lived in Huntington. That's the house they lived in maybe we're still there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we might see some child 10, 20 years down the road that remembers us.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the biggest impact, to just know that we can influence a child's life, hopefully for the better.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that just like go off because when we first started, it was like, and it's still even now, you can feel like an imposter. Like, I'm not really a parent, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing for me, and for I think anybody that wants to be a foster parent, you're a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to get to that point
Mm-hmm.
sometimes because you're like, they were here for a week. I was not a parent. I was a babysitter. But you're a parent. And I mean, like, I always like they're going through a lot of trauma. So this is a traumatic thing for them to leave what they knew and now they just come to our house every day.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to remember it, even if it's just for a week.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, it's like, this is just an obsolete thing. They're not going to remember us. But thinking about what they've already gone through, they're probably going to remember the week that I was with these random people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like there's no small amount of time with somebody. A week is a week, but a week is time to like try to give them an uplifting experience where we are sitting down for meals, where we are having communication, where we are hanging out and playing games or taking them to the park. We still have a week of time, and if you do this, you have time, and kids soak things up.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I think it's I'm not even getting into my parent thing, but age appropriate things. These aren't your kids, but you still need to treat them like with care. I mean, they will soak everything up. And I think if you've never been parents before like us, just look into like age appropriate things, because I'm like firm on like a 9-year-old doesn't need to be seeing a rated R movie. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get in my spiel, but the kids soak things up.
Yeah.
So our kids now, they've been with us a little bit longer, so maybe it doesn't have the same impact, but they're not necessarily like, oh, I want to go to church, I love church and everything, but they're not against it. They're just, it's this church. But our youngest teen will come home and be singing the songs.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even necessarily know the lyrics, but he's like singing the one part over and over, or he's humming it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were singing it back and forth one day. We were like singing the lyric, like he'd say a part and then I'd sing a part. And so like little moments like that, they are soaking up even just the music at church.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like youth group, like they were super into David. They loved learning about David because David's so cool, like, you know, he's like a giant, like, and then like learning about David, like, so they cling to things. They were about David. They hear the music. So yeah, we've had them probably for like 10, 11 months, but even like, I think even in that week, I really do think that he would be singing the songs. He would remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's a sponge, and they both are. They'll say something that you said a week ago, and you're like, "Oh, great, I did say that." So they remember things, and you have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
So when you want to do this, don't do it for your own gratification.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do this because you care about having an actual positive impact, because you care.
Mm-hmm.
They are going through something traumatic, and you have to provide a safe and, I would say, positive outlook as best as you can, even if it's just for a day, even just for a week. It's to take very seriously, even if they say you'll only have them for a day, you'll only have them overnight, this is an emergency, you only have them for a couple of days. That's a couple of days of a whole different life.
Mm-hmm.
That they're probably going to be like, I'm not time just with these random people. And she talked to her cats. You know, like, something like that. So I just say, like, it's very serious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very rewarding, yes. But you shouldn't do it for your own gratification.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from it. You probably learn more than what you can teach them.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably teaching you way more.
Mm-hmm.
So you should just do it for... Just look and really pray and look into your heart on why you want to do it
Mm-hmm.
and why you're thinking about doing it,
Yeah.
instead of what can I get out of it. So what can I give back?
Mm-hmm.
Where's God leading me with this?
Yeah.
So that concludes our episode. Thanks, Tab and Trevor, for being on and sharing about
Being vulnerable.
Yeah.
being just sharing about the Children's House and letting people know this new ministry that's happening, even if it's more of what I would call it's maybe you wouldn't know a lot about it because it's not intended for it's an intimate moment that God has picked you to speak into the lives of kids, and I'm sure people that are listening are happy to get to hear that the Lord is doing things at the Children's Lifehouse. So if you like this episode, go ahead and like and subscribe. Comment down below. Maybe you've been a foster parent. Share with us your experiences. And as always, thank you for supporting New Life Podcast.